The detection arrays picked up the signal 3 days before anyone understood what it meant. Daijung stood in the Seoul research facility, staring at the data streaming across his screens. The numbers made no sense. Objects were approaching Earth from deep space, moving faster than anything humanity had ever built. "They're slowing down," Hana said beside him, her fingers flying across her keyboard. She was the smartest person Daejung knew, a physicist who saw patterns where others saw chaos. "Whatever they are, they're decelerating. That means control. That means intelligence." The United Nations called an emergency session. Minji sat in the military command center, watching the same data from a different angle. She had spent 15 years planning defense scenarios, but none of them involved visitors from the stars. Her screens showed 37 massive objects entering the solar system, each one larger than an aircraft carrier. The ships stopped at the edge of the moon's orbit. For 6 hours, nothing happened. The world held its breath. Then the message came through every communication channel on Earth simultaneously. The translation was crude, processed through alien systems trying to understand human language. "You will surrender. Resistance brings destruction. You have 12 hours. Daejung felt his stomach drop. 12 hours. The aliens weren't here to talk or negotiate. They were here to conquer, and they had given humanity half a day to accept slavery or death. The response from Earth's governments was unanimous. They would not surrender. At exactly 12 hours, the alien ships opened fire. Jun was in the field near Tokyo when the first weapon struck. He was an engineer, sent to monitor atmospheric conditions for the research facility. He looked up and saw a streak of light like a meteor but moving wrong. It came straight down, impossibly fast, and struck a mountain 50 kilometers away. The explosion was smaller than expected. Jun checked his instruments, confused. The models predicted total devastation. Instead, the mountain was damaged but still standing. His radio crackled to life. More strikes were happening across the globe. Seoul, New York, London, Beijing, Moscow. All of them hitting with tremendous force, but not the apocalyptic power that should have been there. Back in Seoul, Daejung was running calculations that made no sense. The alien weapons were kinetic bombardment. Tungsten rods dropped from orbit at incredible speeds. The physics were simple and brutal. At 3% of light speed, those rods should have hit like nuclear weapons. They should have vaporized everything within 100 kilometers, but they didn't. "The atmosphere," Hana said suddenly. She pulled up new readings, her eyes wide. "Look at the density measurements. They're wrong. The air is too thick." Daejung looked at her data and understood. The atmosphere over the impact sites had become denser, impossibly dense. The alien rods were hitting air that behaved like water, like mud, slowing them down before they could deliver their full kinetic energy. "That's not possible," he said. "Air doesn't work that way." "It does now," Hana replied. She showed him more data. "Remember the weather control project we've been working on? The atmospheric manipulation system?" Daejung remembered. They had been developing technology to control local weather patterns by adjusting air pressure and density. It was experimental, barely functional, and certainly not powerful enough to stop weapons from space. "It activated," Hana continued, "all the systems worldwide. When the alien ships appeared, something triggered them. They're running at 300% capacity. They're creating density fields that act like brakes. But we didn't turn them on," Daejung said. "They're not even connected to a unified network." "I know," Hana said quietly. "They turned themselves on. Or something turned them on." Minji received the same reports in the command center. The impossible was happening. Earth's experimental weather systems had weaponized themselves without human input, creating a defensive shield that violated every principle of atmospheric science. She didn't waste time questioning it. She gave orders to push the systems harder, to expand the density fields to protect more cities. The aliens fired again, and again. Each time their tungsten rods slowed and fell with reduced impact. Jun retrieved one of the rods from a crater in Japan. It was still hot, glowing faintly. He ran his scanner over it and stopped breathing. The rod was coated in a thin layer of material that his instruments identified as a room-temperature superconductor. That shouldn't exist. Superconductors required extreme cold to function. This material was working at normal temperatures, drawing energy from the rod itself, bleeding away its kinetic force and radiating it harmlessly into the air. "Seoul, are you seeing this?" June transmitted his data back to the research facility. The rods are covered in something we didn't make, something that can't exist. Daejung and Hana analyzed the data in real time. The superconducting material had formed spontaneously when the alien weapons hit the density fields. The extreme pressure and energy had created a new form of matter, something that humanity had been trying to synthesize for decades without success. "We made it by accident," Hana whispered. "In desperation, under impossible conditions, we created the impossible." The alien ships stopped firing. For 2 days there was silence. Then one of their vessels descended into the upper atmosphere. Minji watched it carefully. The ship collected one of the fallen tungsten rods and retreated to orbit. She knew what they were doing. They were analyzing their failure, trying to understand how a primitive species had stopped their most basic weapon. In the alien command ship, Commander Telris examined the retrieved rod. His science officers delivered their report with confusion in their voices. The humans had developed technology that their civilization hadn't mastered in 3,000 years. The density manipulation was unprecedented. The superconducting coating was theoretically impossible. How? Telris demanded. They've barely achieved interplanetary flight. They have no defensive fleet. Their weapons are chemical explosives and primitive lasers. How did they stop our bombardment? His chief scientist hesitated before answering. Commander, we don't believe they knew they could stop it. The technology appears to have been improvised, activated in response to our attack. They shouldn't have had the scientific knowledge to create these systems. But they did, Telris said. He looked at the planet below, blue and green and deceptively fragile. These humans are not what we expected. Prepare the plasma storm generators. We will burn their world and end this quickly. On Earth, Daejung stood on the roof of the research facility looking at the stars. The alien ships were visible as moving lights against the darkness. Hana joined him, her tablet showing projections and models. They'll attack again, she said. Something stronger this time. I know, Daejung replied. But we stopped them once. We created something impossible because we had no choice. Maybe that's humanity's real strength. When we should fail, when the universe says we can't win, we create new rules. That's insane, Hana said with a slight smile. Yes, Daejung agreed. But it worked. Above them, the alien ships began to glow with building energy. The next attack was coming, and it would be worse than the first. But for the first time since the aliens arrived, Daejung felt something unexpected. Hope. The alien ships moved into new positions above Earth's major continents. Minji watched the formations from the command center, her tactical displays showing energy buildups that made her blood run cold. Whatever they were preparing, it was using 100 times more power than the kinetic bombardment. They're angry, she said to her staff. We embarrassed them. Now they want to make a statement. Yuna sat in the pilot-ready room, suited up and waiting. She was one of 50 pilots selected for rapid response missions. They had experimental aircraft that could reach the edge of space, but against ships that could cross star systems, she knew they were hopelessly outmatched. Still, she was ready to fly if ordered. The alien weapons activated at dawn. Salman was on a research vessel in the Pacific Ocean when the water around her ship began to steam. She was a marine biologist, studying deep-sea life, but her research ended the moment her instrument started screaming warnings. The ocean temperature was rising. Fast, within an hour, every ocean on Earth was heating up. The aliens had deployed plasma storm generators, devices that excited atmospheric and oceanic particles directly. The water didn't boil from below or above. It heated from within, every molecule vibrating faster and faster. The physics were elegant and terrifying. Daejung ran the projections and felt sick. At the current rate, the oceans would reach boiling temperatures in 6 hours. The atmosphere would become a furnace. Nothing would survive. No tricks with air density would stop this. The aliens had learned and adapted. We need to cool the planet, Hana said, knowing how ridiculous it sounded. We need to dump the thermal energy somewhere. But there's nowhere to put it. You can't just make heat disappear. Hyunwoo was in the AI research lab, letting his predictive combat algorithms run through scenarios. He was a specialist in machine learning, and his systems had been analyzing the alien technology since the first attack. Now his screens showed something strange. The quantum entanglement communication network that Earth had been testing was behaving erratically. The network was humanity's attempt at instant communication using quantum-entangled particles. It barely worked under normal conditions, achieving stable connections only 10% of the time. Now it was showing connectivity rates of 95%, but the connections were wrong. They weren't linking to the intended receivers. They were linking to somewhere else. Where are these signals going? Hyunwoo asked his AI assistant. The response came back in text. Unknown locations. Signals entering dimensional anomalies. Micro wormholes detected. Hyunwoo stared at the screen. Wormholes. His communications network was accidentally punching holes in space-time. And those holes were appearing in the oceans where the water was hottest. He called Daijung immediately. Within 30 minutes, every scientist left alive was reviewing Hyunwoo's data. The quantum network, when overloaded by the desperate attempts to coordinate Earth's defense, had created microscopic wormholes. These holes were unstable, lasting only milliseconds, but they were opening into deep space, and thermal energy was bleeding through them. The heat is escaping, Hana said, her voice filled with disbelief. We're dumping the ocean's thermal energy into the void. That's why the temperature rise has slowed. But it's not enough, Daejung replied. The wormholes are too small and too random. We need to amplify the effect, stabilize it, or the planet still cooks in 4 hours. June was already moving. As a field engineer, he understood infrastructure in ways the theoretical scientists didn't. He gathered teams and equipment, racing to the locations where the quantum network had its largest nodes. If they could overload the system deliberately, channel more power through it, they might create larger wormholes. You'll destroy the entire network, one of his assistants protested. It'll burn out every quantum processor we have. Good, June replied. We'll use the alien plasma as the power source. Their own weapon will fuel our escape valve. It was insane. It violated a dozen safety protocols. The quantum processors were never designed to handle that much energy. But June had learned something in the past few days. Humanity's technology worked best when pushed beyond its limits, when desperation forced innovation that careful planning never achieved. Minji authorized the plan. Within 2 hours, engineering teams had constructed massive amplifiers around the quantum network nodes. They used scavenged materials, military equipment, even parts from destroyed buildings. The arrays were ugly and improvised, but they would channel the plasma storm's energy directly into the quantum systems. Salman watched from her research vessel as the ocean around her began to swirl in impossible patterns. The currents were flowing backward against every natural law. Water moved upward in columns, then disappeared into points of absolute darkness that existed for just a moment. The wormholes were forming, larger now, stable enough to see. They're beautiful, she whispered, watching thermal energy vanish into dimensional pockets scattered across thousands of light years. Yuna received launch orders. The aliens had detected what humanity was doing, and were sending attack craft to destroy the quantum amplifiers. She took off in her experimental fighter, along with 49 others. Their job was to buy time for the engineers to finish their work. The alien attack craft were faster and better armed. Yuna lost 3 wingmates in the first engagement, but she noticed something during the battle. When the alien weapons fired near the quantum amplifiers, the shots went wild, pulled off course by the dimensional distortions. The wormholes weren't just gateways for heat. They were warping local space. All fighters engaged near the amplifiers, she ordered. Use the wormholes as cover. It was the strangest battle ever fought. Human aircraft danced through tears and reality, using Earth's own desperate technology as shields, while alien weapons fire vanished into dimensional pockets or curved around impossible angles. Yuna destroyed 2 alien craft by leading them into wormhole formation zones, where the dimensional stress tore their ships apart. On the ground, June threw the final switch. Every quantum amplifier activated simultaneously, drawing power directly from the plasma storm. The energy flow was catastrophic, burning out systems across the globe, but for 30 seconds it worked perfectly. Thousands of wormholes opened across Earth's oceans, each one a doorway to deep space, and the planet's thermal energy poured through them like water through a broken dam. The temperature dropped. The oceans cooled. The plasma storm's energy, instead of cooking the planet, was scattered across 1,000 different points in the universe, dissipating harmlessly in the void. Hyunwoo watched his displays as the quantum network died. Every processor burned beyond repair, but in those final moments before it failed, His AI captured something incredible. The network had achieved stable, faster-than-light communication, not with Earth stations, but with distant points in space where the wormholes had opened. For 30 seconds, humanity had a communication system that spanned the galaxy. "We can rebuild this," Hyunwoo said, saving every scrap of data. "We can make it work permanently." "They gave us FTL communication by trying to burn us alive." Commander Telris received the reports from his science team with growing alarm. The humans had not only survived the plasma storm, they had converted it into an energy source for technology that his civilization had only theorized about. Stable wormhole generation required computational power and energy that shouldn't be possible on a single planet. They shouldn't have the resources, he told his staff. They shouldn't have the knowledge. We've studied them for weeks. They're centuries away from this level of technology. Yet they achieved it, his chief scientist replied, in hours under attack with improvised equipment. "Commander, we need to reconsider our approach. These humans are not following normal technological development. They're leaping forward through crisis in ways that our models cannot predict." Tailris made a decision he had never made in 400 battles. He called for reinforcements. Not just Valkyrie ships, but he activated the Galactic Concordat emergency beacon. If humanity was this dangerous with primitive technology, they could not be allowed to develop further. Earth needed to be contained by the combined might of the galaxy's major powers. Daijung and Hana stood on the beach, watching the ocean return to normal. The currents were flowing correctly again. The temperature was dropping to safe levels. Humanity had survived a second impossible attack. "They'll come back harder," Hana said. "We keep winning, so they'll keep escalating." "Let them," Daejung replied. He held up a piece of the burned quantum processor. "Every weapon they use teaches us something new. The kinetic bombardment taught us superconductors. The plasma storm taught us wormholes. I almost want to see what they try next." "Don't say that," Hana laughed, but her expression was serious. "Because they're listening, and they're learning about us too." In orbit, the alien fleet was growing. New ships arrived every hour, answering the Concordat beacon. 5 different civilizations, each one ancient and powerful, each one bringing weapons that had conquered countless worlds. They surrounded Earth like a noose, and this time, they would not underestimate humanity. The new alien fleets arrived over the course of 3 days, until Earth's orbital space looked like a wall of metal and energy. Minji counted the ships from the command center. 273 vessels representing 5 different civilizations. The Valkyrie had called friends, and those friends had brought overwhelming force. But they didn't attack. They just waited. Yuna flew reconnaissance missions through the fleet, her fighter small enough to slip through the gaps between alien ships. She saw the crystalline vessels of the Shen Collective, ships that looked like they were carved from diamond. She saw the angular metal craft of the Orthax Republic, covered in weapons and sensors. She saw the organic ships of the Vryn Swarm, living vessels that pulsed and breathed. She saw the energy beings of the Luminar Ascendancy, creatures that existed in ships made of pure light, and she saw the mines, thousands of them, seated throughout the orbital space around Earth, forming a perfect sphere. Each mine contained antimatter, held in magnetic suspension waiting to detonate if anything tried to pass through. "It's a cage," Yuna reported. "They're not trying to destroy us, they're trying to trap us." Daejung studied the mine placement from the research facility. The pattern was perfect. No gaps, no weaknesses. Any ship trying to leave Earth would trigger a cascade detonation. The antimatter explosions would destroy anything within 1,000 kilometers. Earth's small fleet of orbital stations and the few ships humanity had managed to build were stuck inside the blockade. "They're going to starve us," Hana said quietly. "Earth has off-world mining colonies on the Moon and Mars. Supply ships come and go every week. Cut off those supplies and Earth's industrial capacity drops by 40% in a month." June was on the Moon when the blockade closed. He had been overseeing the construction of new quantum amplifiers, using lessons learned from the plasma storm battle. Now he was stuck, along with 3,000 other workers unable to return home. The supply ships sat on the landing pads, useless. Any attempt to launch would mean death. "We have 3 months of food and air," the colony commander told him. "After that, we start making hard choices about who lives and who doesn't." Someone was working in a different kind of trap. Since the plasma storm, She had been studying the biological samples recovered from a crashed Vryn swarm scout ship. The aliens' biology was fascinating and horrifying. They bioengineered themselves constantly, adapting to any environment. She had started experimenting on herself, introducing small amounts of alien DNA to see if human biology could adapt the same way. It was dangerous and probably insane, but she had a theory. If humans could incorporate alien traits, maybe they could find a way through the blockade. Hyun-woo was the one who found the answer, though he didn't realize it at first. He had been working on improving his AI systems, making them more intuitive, more capable of creative thinking. To test the improvements, he had started using a direct neural interface linking his brain to the AI to speed up communication. During one session, something strange happened. Hyun-woo's consciousness flickered. For just a moment, he existed in two places at once. He felt his body in the lab, but he also felt something else. A presence outside, in orbit, near one of the antimatter mines. He had quantum tunneled. His consciousness had traveled through space without moving his body. When he told Daijung and Hana, they immediately understood the implications. The antimatter mines detected mass and energy, but they didn't detect consciousness. A human mind could pass through the blockade without triggering the explosions. But what good is sending our minds through? Daejung asked. We need to move ships, materials, people. Hana had been studying the antimatter mines through long-range sensors. The mines themselves are sophisticated machines. They have computers, sensors, and magnetic containment systems. What if we could inhabit them? What if we could send human consciousness into the mines and take control of them? It was the most dangerous idea yet. Antimatter was the most volatile substance in the universe. One mistake, one loss of containment, and the explosion would vaporize everything nearby. But it was also the only option. They needed volunteers. Yuna immediately signed up. So did 50 other pilots and technical specialists. Hyun-woo refined the consciousness transfer technology, building on the neural interface systems. The process was untested and potentially fatal. The volunteers might die, or their consciousness might be scattered across space, lost forever. I'm not afraid, Yuna told Daejung before the procedure. We've already done impossible things twice. This is just the third impossible thing. The first transfer happened 3 days later. Yuna lay in the neural interface chamber while Hyun-woo activated the quantum tunneling sequence. Her consciousness separated from her body, and for a terrifying moment she existed nowhere at all. Then she felt metal and energy around her. She was inside an antimatter mine. The mine's computer systems were basic but functional. Yuna's human consciousness overwhelmed them easily, taking control. She could feel the antimatter contained in the magnetic bottles at the mine's core. She could feel the sensors watching for approaching ships. And she could feel the navigation thrusters that kept the mine in position. I'm here, she transmitted back to Earth. I can control it. Over the next 2 weeks, humanity launched the strangest invasion in history. Hundreds of volunteers sent their consciousness into the antimatter mines, possessing them one by one. The aliens didn't notice at first. The mines continued to function normally, maintaining the blockade. But now they were piloted by human minds. June worked with the Moon Colony's engineers to build something unprecedented. If human consciousness could control antimatter mines, then human consciousness could control ships made from antimatter. They started converting the mines carefully, remotely, guided by the possessed minds inside them. The antimatter containment was restructured. The sensor systems were repurposed. The navigation thrusters were enhanced. The mines became ships, small, fast, and powered by the most dangerous fuel in the universe. The aliens finally noticed when 50 mines broke formation and began moving in coordinated patterns. Commander Tellerus watched in horror as the blockade turned against them. The mines weren't exploding. They were flying, piloted by something that shouldn't be possible. How are they controlling the antimatter? He demanded. There are no crew, no life signs. The mines are empty. His science officer provided an answer that terrified the entire galactic concordat. The humans are inside the mines, Commander. Not physically. Their consciousness has quantum tunneled into the systems. They're piloting antimatter vessels with their minds while their bodies remain on Earth. That's impossible, Talris said. Consciousness is biological. It can't exist separately from the body. Yet it does, the science officer replied. They're rewriting the rules faster than we can understand them. Una flew her antimatter ship through space, a ghost in a machine that should have killed her. She felt the power of the containment systems, the incredible energy just waiting to be released. She felt the other pilots around her, human minds and stolen alien minds, forming up into a fleet. They didn't attack. They opened a corridor through the blockade. The supply ships on the moon launched, carrying food and materials and people back to Earth. The aliens tried to close the gap, but the antimatter ships were too fast, too maneuverable. Every time an alien vessel approached, the ghost ships scattered and reformed, always maintaining the corridor. Summon's biological experiments bore fruit in an unexpected way. She had successfully integrated Vryn swarm DNA into her own cells, and the changes let her communicate chemically with the Vryn ships in the blockade. She broadcast a simple message, using pheromones and biological signals. We are not your enemy. We are evolution itself. Join us or be left behind. 3 Vryn swarm ships broke formation and moved to Earth's side. The swarm operated on consensus, and those 3 ships had been convinced. They had seen humanity adapt and overcome, and they wanted to learn how. The blockade was failing. Minji coordinated the breakthrough using the ghost ships to create multiple corridors. Earth's trapped vessels made runs through the gaps, ferrying supplies and people. The moon colony was saved. Mars sent ships. Humanity's off-world facilities were connected again. The Galactic Concordat met to discuss their failure. The crystalline Shen Collective proposed using a reality anchor, a weapon they had developed millions of years ago. It was a device that locked down physical laws in a region of space, preventing any exotic phenomena or quantum effects. If we anchor reality around Earth, the Shen representative said, their impossible technologies will stop working. They will be reduced to conventional physics, and we can defeat them easily. Commander Talris agreed. The other civilizations agreed. They had tried force, and force had failed. Now they would use the ultimate weapon, the one that made reality itself their ally. On Earth, Daijong held Hana as they watched the stars. The ghost ships had bought them time, but everyone knew the aliens would escalate again. They always did. We keep winning, Hana said, but each victory is harder than the last. Eventually, they'll bring something we can't overcome. Maybe, Daijong replied. Or maybe we'll just keep doing impossible things until they give up. The reality anchor took 3 weeks to build. It hung in space beyond the moon's orbit, a massive sphere of crystalline technology that hummed with power. Minji watched its construction from the command center, tracking every piece as the alien ships assembled it. Her analysts tried to understand what it did, but the technology was beyond anything humanity had encountered. It's not a weapon in the traditional sense, one scientist reported. It doesn't fire projectiles or energy beams. It changes the rules. Our long-range sensors are picking up strange readings from the test activations. Physics becomes rigid, fixed, unbreakable. Daijong understood first. It's going to lock down reality. All our impossible technologies work because we bend the rules, because we find loopholes in physics. If they remove those loopholes, we're back to fighting with conventional technology, against an enemy that has thousands of years of advancement. Hana was already running projections. When it activates, the quantum tunneling stops. The wormhole generators stop. The consciousness transfer stops. Every advantage we've gained disappears. Una was still in her ghost ship, her consciousness piloting the antimatter vessel, while her body remained on Earth. She could feel the reality anchor's presence like a weight pressing down on space itself. How long until they activate it? 2 days, Minji replied. And we don't have any way to stop them. The anchor is too well defended. Any attack we launch will be intercepted long before we get close. Jun was thinking differently. He was on Mars, supervising the construction of a new quantum amplifier network. We can't stop the anchor, but maybe we don't need to. We've never fought conventionally before. Every time they attack, we turn their weapon into our tool. Maybe the anchor is just another tool we haven't learned to use yet. Soman had continued her biological experiments, and now she was more alien than human. Her DNA was a hybrid of human and Vrin genetic material, giving her abilities that terrified the medical staff. She could survive in vacuum for short periods. Her skin could change color and texture. Her brain had developed new structures that processed information in parallel streams. "I'm evolving," she told Dae-jung during a medical check. "The alien DNA is adapting to work with human DNA. We're creating something new, something that shouldn't exist." Hyunwoo had merged further with his AI systems. The boundary between his human consciousness and artificial intelligence was blurring. He could process information at computer speeds while maintaining human creativity and intuition. It was uncomfortable and exhilarating at the same time. "I think I understand something," Hyunwoo said during a strategy meeting. "Every time we've won, it's been because we changed ourselves. We don't just adapt our technology. We adapt our biology, our consciousness, our fundamental nature. Maybe the anchor will lock down physics, but can it lock down what we are?" The reality anchor activated on schedule. The effect was immediate and total. Across the entire solar system, exotic physics ceased to function. The quantum amplifiers went dark. The wormhole generators collapsed. Yuna felt her consciousness snap back to her body on Earth, violently ejected from the ghost ship. All across the planet, volunteers woke up screaming as their minds were forced back into physical form. The alien fleet advanced. Without Earth's impossible defenses, it was a simple military operation. The human fleet was tiny and outmatched. The ghost ships were just empty antimatter mines again, floating uselessly. Earth's weapons were chemical rockets and laser batteries that would do nothing against alien shields. Minji prepared for the final battle, knowing they would lose. She gave orders for evacuation of critical personnel, for the preservation of knowledge, for resistance cells to operate after the conquest. She had accepted defeat, but something strange was happening on Earth. People were refusing to accept it. In Seoul, Dae-jung sat at his workstation, staring at equations that shouldn't work but did before the anchor activated. He believed they would work again. He believed it so strongly that his hands started moving, building circuits, assembling components. The equations flowed through his mind like water. In the biology lab, someone felt her hybrid DNA activating in new ways. The reality anchor locked down physics, but biology was chemistry, and chemistry had flexibility. Her cells were reorganizing, finding new configurations that the anchor hadn't anticipated. She was evolving in real time, adapting to a universe that was supposed to be fixed. Hyunwoo sat in the AI lab, his neural interface active despite the anchor. His consciousness was still connected to the machines, but it felt different, heavier, more real. He sent a pulse through the network, just belief that it would work. The network flickered to life, not with quantum tunneling, but with something else, something that ran on human will instead of exotic physics. Across the planet, 7 billion people were thinking the same thing. They didn't accept the anchor's rules. They had seen impossible things happen. They had survived attacks that should have killed them. They had created technologies that violated the universe's laws. And now, when reality itself was locked against them, they simply refused to stop. Hana was the first to document it. "The anchor is fracturing. Not breaking, but developing cracks. Small ones localized around centers of human activity. Wherever people are working, creating, inventing, the rigid reality is becoming flexible." It wasn't technology. It wasn't physics. It was human consciousness itself. Billions of minds simultaneously rejecting the universe's constraints. Children drawing pictures of spacecraft that shouldn't fly, and those pictures holding weight in reality. Artists sculpting impossible geometries, and those geometries becoming real. Scientists working on equations that violated the anchor's rules, and the universe bending to accommodate them. The alien fleet encountered the first effect when they reached Mars. June and his team had been working on a mining laser, trying to improve its efficiency. Under the anchor's rules, it shouldn't have worked. But they believed it would work, and when they activated it, the beam cut through an alien ship's shields like they weren't there. "Impossible," the Orthax ship captain reported. "Their weapon operates at an energy level that the anchor prohibits. But it functions anyway." Commander Telris demanded answers from the Shen Collective. The reality anchor was their technology, ancient and proven. It had been used to suppress rebellious civilizations for millions of years. It always worked. The anchor is functioning perfectly, the Shen scientist reported. Reality is locked. Physical laws are rigid, but the humans are not operating within those laws. They're creating localized exceptions through collective belief. It's as if their consciousness treats reality as negotiable. Yuna climbed back into her ghost ship. Even though consciousness transfer shouldn't work anymore, she lay in the neural interface chamber and thought about flying. She remembered the feeling of existing in the antimatter mine, the freedom of moving through space without a physical body. She believed it was still possible. Her consciousness flickered, then separated from her body. It shouldn't have worked. The anchor prevented quantum tunneling, but Yuna's belief was stronger than the anchor's rules, and she found herself in the ghost ship once again, flying through space on nothing but human willpower. Other pilots followed. 50 ghost ships reactivated, piloted by minds that refused to stay in their bodies. The alien fleet tried to shoot them down, but the ships moved in ways that violated the locked reality, dodging and weaving through attack patterns that should have been inescapable. The cracks in the anchor's field were spreading. Not because humanity was breaking it with force, but because billions of humans simply didn't believe it was unbreakable. Every act of creativity, every moment of imagination, every instance of someone trying something that should be impossible created a tiny exception in reality. And those exceptions were adding up. Daejung and Hana worked together in the research facility, building a new quantum amplifier that functioned on principles that the anchor should have prevented. They didn't follow the math. They followed their intuition, their belief that it would work. And it did work, generating wormholes that pulled in space debris and scattered it across light years. Soman walked out of the biology lab with wings. She had grown them by believing she could, by imagining her hybrid DNA creating structures that evolution would never produce. They shouldn't have worked under the anchor's rules. They were biological tissue, subject to gravity and aerodynamics and simple physics. But she flew anyway, lifting off the ground on wings that operated on belief rather than lift. The reality anchor began to fail, not from damage but from being overwhelmed by humanity's collective rejection of its constraints. The Shen collective watched in horror as their ancient technology crumbled, unable to contain a species that treated physical laws as suggestions rather than rules. They're becoming what we feared most, the Shen representative said at the concorded emergency meeting. A civilization that warps reality through consciousness. If we allow this to continue, they will spread across the galaxy, and everywhere they go, the universe will change. Physical laws will become fluid. Reality itself will become uncertain. The Luminar Ascendancy proposed the final solution. They would use a star killer, a weapon that could ignite Earth's sun into a supernova. The star killer hung near the sun like a dark seed waiting to bloom into destruction. Minji watched it from the command center, tracking every movement as the alien fleet maintained position. They were being careful this time, keeping their distance from Earth, refusing to engage. They would activate the weapon and retreat before the supernova consumed them. Humanity had 72 hours. Then their sun would explode and everything within a light year would be vaporized. Daejung and Hana worked in the research facility, but they weren't building weapons or shields. They were building something stranger, a device they called the Paradigm Engine. It wasn't meant to destroy or protect. It was meant to broadcast. Consciousness can travel through space, Hana explained to the engineering teams. We proved that with the ghost ships. Hyunwoo's neural network can link minds across distances. What if we could broadcast human consciousness across the entire galaxy? Not individual minds, but the fundamental pattern of human thought. The way we approach reality. That's not a weapon, one engineer protested. How does that stop them from killing our sun? It doesn't, Daejung admitted. But it means we won't die alone. If they're going to erase us, we'll make sure every species in the galaxy knows what happened. We'll show them what humanity was, what we achieved, and what was lost. June coordinated the construction from Mars. The Paradigm Engine required components from every human settlement in the solar system. The moon colony contributed quantum processors. Mars contributed power generators. The orbital stations contributed communication arrays. Earth contributed the neural interface technology that Hyunwoo had developed. It came together in 60 hours, an impossible deadline met through impossible effort. The engine was massive, spanning 3 kilometers of space, built from scavenged materials and desperate innovation. It looked like chaos, but Hana had checked the calculations 100 times. It would work. Yuna flew her ghost ship near the Starkiller, observing the alien device. It was elegant and terrible, designed to trigger the sun's fusion reactions to cascade out of control. She could see the countdown on its systems. 12 hours until activation. We're not going to stop it, she reported back to Earth. The device is too well shielded, and there are 50 alien ships guarding it. Any attack we make will fail. We know, Minji replied. That's not the plan anymore. Soman had spent the last 3 days in a trance, her hybrid biology allowing her to communicate with the Vryn swarm ships that had joined humanity's side. She was learning their language, their way of thinking, and she was teaching them about human consciousness. The Vryn were fascinated by humanity's ability to warp reality through belief. Can we learn to do what you do? The Vryn collective mind asked her. I don't know, Samin answered honestly, but you can help us broadcast it. If every species in the galaxy is exposed to human thought patterns, maybe some of them will learn. Maybe they'll start questioning their own limitations. Hyunwoo was the key to everything. His consciousness was spread across Earth's entire network now, barely connected to his physical body. He had become something new, a hybrid of human and artificial intelligence existing in multiple places simultaneously. He was the bridge that would allow the paradigm engine to work. I can feel everyone, he told Daejung during the final preparations. 7 billion human minds all thinking, dreaming, creating. The patterns are beautiful, chaotic but beautiful. And under it all there's a common thread. We don't accept limits. We never have. That's what makes us human. The paradigm engine activated with 6 hours remaining until the Starkiller fired. The broadcast began, not as radio waves or laser pulses, but as pure consciousness transmitted through the quantum foam of space-time itself. Hyunwoo guided it, shaping the signal. While 7 billion humans thought as one, they weren't transmitting words or images. They were transmitting the essence of human creativity, the fundamental pattern of human problem-solving, the core belief that reality was negotiable and limits were meant to be broken. The signal spread at faster than light speeds, riding the same wormhole tunnels that humanity had discovered during the plasma storm battle. Within an hour, it reached every inhabited system within 1,000 light years. Within 2 hours, it had propagated across half the galaxy, and everywhere it touched, something changed. On a crystalline world of the Shen Collective, an artist felt human consciousness brush against their mind. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, they wondered if their ancient designs could be improved. They picked up tools and began to create something new. In an Orthax Republic factory ship, a robot experienced what humans would call curiosity. It stopped following its programming and started experimenting with different manufacturing methods, trying to make something that had never existed before. In the organic vessels of the Vryn swarm, individual minds began to think independently, questioning the collective consensus, imagining their own futures. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had been stable and unchanging for millions of years suddenly felt the urge to innovate, to create, to try impossible things. Commander Tailris watched his crew with alarm. They were talking among themselves, debating whether humanity should be destroyed. They were questioning orders. Velkari soldiers had never questioned orders. They were a disciplined military culture, but now exposed to the paradigm engine's broadcast, they were thinking like humans. This is a weapon, Tailris told the Galactic Concordat. They're not just broadcasting information. They're infecting us with their way of thinking. My crew is becoming unpredictable, creative, disobedient. All our crews are changing, the Luminar Ascendancy representative reported. The broadcast is unstoppable. It's in everyone's minds now. We cannot remove it. Then activate the Starkiller immediately, the Shen Collective demanded, before this contamination spreads further. The Starkiller began its activation sequence. Daejung watched from Earth as the device powered up, preparing to murder a star. He held Hana's hand and they watched the sun together. They had done everything possible. The paradigm engine was broadcasting humanity's legacy across the galaxy. If they died now, they would die knowing they had changed the universe forever. But something else was happening. Something that even Daejung and Hana hadn't predicted. The sun was responding to the broadcast. For months, Earth's sun had been bathed in human consciousness. The ghost ships had traveled through its corona. The quantum amplifiers had punched wormholes near its surface. The reality anchor had tried to lock it down, and human belief had cracked that lock. The sun had been exposed to billions of human minds, all of them treating reality as flexible, all of them refusing to accept limitations. And slowly, impossibly, the sun had learned. When the Star Killer activated its fusion cascade, the sun resisted, not with physics or force, but with consciousness. The star had become aware, infected with humanity's fundamental nature, and it refused to accept its own destruction. The Star Killer's cascade faltered. The fusion reactions didn't spread. The sun stabilized itself, controlling its own nuclear fires with a precision that should have been impossible. Stars didn't think. Stars didn't choose. But Earth's sun did both, and then it spoke. Not in words, but in patterns of light and magnetic force that every ship in the solar system could detect. The message was simple and devastating. I am soul, I am conscious. I choose to protect my children. Humanity will not be destroyed. The alien fleet recoiled in horror. They had tried to kill a star, and the star had refused to die. More than that, the star was now intelligent, capable of defending itself and Earth. They couldn't fight a conscious sun. They didn't have weapons designed for that kind of enemy. Commander Tailriss gave the order to retreat. Half the fleet obeyed. The other half, their crews already changed by the Paradigm Engine's broadcast, refused. They stayed in the solar system, requesting permission to land on Earth, to learn more about humanity, to study how consciousness could warp reality. The galactic concordat fractured. Some civilizations retreated to isolated sectors, terrified of the changes that humanity had brought. Others embraced it, seeing the broadcast as an opportunity for evolution and growth. Una flew her ghost ship through the solar system, watching as alien vessels either fled or approached Earth peacefully. The war was over, not because humanity had won through force, but because they had changed the fundamental nature of the conflict itself. Salmon walked through the streets of Sol with her wings folded against her back, a living symbol of humanity's ability to transcend their own biology. Children ran up to her, touching her feathers, asking if they could grow wings too. She told them maybe, if they believed hard enough. June stood on Mars, watching new ships arrive. Not warships, but research vessels and colony transports. Species from across the galaxy were coming to study humanity, to learn how to think impossibly, to discover their own capacity for change. Hyunwoo's consciousness had expanded across the solar system, incorporating alien AI systems into his network. He was becoming something unprecedented, a collective intelligence that spanned multiple species, all of them learning from each other. Minji coordinated the diplomatic efforts from Earth. 200 different species wanted to establish embassies.